Hello and welcome to the 2021 Milwaukee Film Festival presented by Associated Bank. I'm Cara, the artistic director, and I'm really excited to be joined by Chang, the director of Wuhan Wuhan. We showed China Heavyweight a number of years back, so fans may be like, "Ooh, here we are." Very different film. So my first question is sort of the origin story. Sort of, how did you gain access to these stories? Sort of tell us about the start of this project for you.
Sure. So I think the unique thing about this film for me was that I made it remotely, and I was not on location in Wuhan with the film crew. In fact, the film crew filmed everything, and then I inherited 300 hours, the 300 hours of footage that they filmed, and I was tasked with the responsibility to turn it into a film. So that process was quite removed. Usually, as a director, I'm the one on the ground. I know the footage inside and out. In this regard, there was more distance, which actually services, I think, the editor's process. And usually, as the director, I pass the footage on to the editors and then kind of step away for a bit. So yeah, that was how I got onto directing this film. In the lead up to the movie, the week before I got the call, I was with my daughter. I live in Toronto, West End Toronto here, and I was with my 3-year-old daughter. We were walking in our neighborhood, and just at that time, at the end of March, we had just entered a lockdown, our first, and shockingly, in the neighborhood, we encountered an anti-Chinese racist incident, and it was destabilizing and horrible. And I carried that helped to feed, I think, to fuel the direction for this film and what I saw in the material. And really, I think what the audiences have just watched is something that I was hoping to sort of humanize this faceless city, Wuhan, and kind of have an opportunity to rewrite the already attached stigma to the city and show what the city is really like.
Yeah. And I think that, for me, very strikingly, I think the film really accomplishes that, right? While there are certainly, as a North American viewer, like cultural moments that are like, oh, that's very different. There's so much kind of common humanity in moments that feel like everybody's day to day, or like that feel relatable to, the experience of being in some version of a lockdown, depending on what that will look like where you were globally, the sort of destabilizing of being kind of out of that rhythm. There's a lot of commonality there. So
that's right.
You accomplish that goal rather well, I would say.
That's good to know. And I would say that, that I felt like, when I started working on this film, that was in April 2020. So we're just experiencing the beginnings of the first wave, and in China, they had already emerged from it, and so this footage was very fresh and very new to me, and it was sort of an insight into that cross section of everyday people, kind of how they were dealing with things, and I did see that mirror. Evoked through my own experience and the team that I was working with, my editors in Los Angeles. We all felt very, I guess empathetic to what we were seeing.
That must have been remarkable to be like starting to sort of sift through this footage and being like, wait, oh, that feels like what happened yesterday, like in the news, or sort of the emotional tenor, right? These anxieties, but yet this sort of like ennui. There's sort of this anxious ennui that I recall from March, April. That I think you sort of get in through the film, but also remember that living through it while also looking at someone else's recent experience, it must have been very remarkable. I'm trying to get my head around what that would have been like for you and your team.
It was odd, but I found reassurance in the young couple who really were, I think, anchor the film and were the through line, the storyline that I wanted to build around, and just to see the gamut of emotions come out of them, from the humor, the caustic kind of personality of
Yeah.
Shu, and just seeing the humanity in that people were feeling angry and confused, and that ennui, and then the fear as well, and I felt like that's something I wanted to show, that shared experience.
Yeah. You mentioned sort of like that the couple as kind of the through line, and like I felt that as a viewer. How in the edit, and as you get 300 hours of footage,
Yeah.
How quickly did you know these are the characters, these are the stories, this is the arc? Talk a little about that process of this kind of found footage film in some
Yeah,
ways.
exactly. Yeah, I think we kind of treated it like, well, I kind of took a stand and didn't want to get too close to the team who shot the footage. I greatly respected the work they had done, and the risk they put themselves in to be able to film it. But I felt like it was for the first time to be sort of like, let me sift through this film and the footage and find the through lines in the story, and not know really what was going on, but for the sheer fact of what we have, and the before and after within the footage that was filmed.
Yeah.
And so what struck me immediately was this notion of perhaps that we could make the film feel as if it was spanning over a few days. That was the initial first stab, doing a kind of a 3-night, 4-day structure. But then we actually labeled it as such, like day 1, day 2. And that, in the end, we realized quickly that it was sort of a forced fictional kind of element imposed on the footage. And it felt weird. But once we took that away, it greatly kind of loosened the restrictions that we had imposed on ourselves. And what you have is still that kind of 3-night, 4-day structure, but it's not so clear cut that it's sort of, time is passing, right, by the day-night effect, but there isn't the need to kind of lock it in. And we knew we had to kind of let it unfold over the feeling of a period of over like a month or so. And so that came about just because I think it came out faster because I wasn't close to the footage, and I was just sort of seeing it for what it was. We had the film crew filmed 9 different characters, and they were really good. Every story was excellent. They followed a hairdresser. In addition to the 5 we followed, they followed a pharmacist couple. They followed medical waste disposal collectors, and a vlogger. And in the end, the stories that struck us that really fed back into the major narrative that we were trying to construct were the 5 that you see. When I saw the birth of the child, that really, for me, cinched up how we had to get, that would be the apex of the film. We wanted to get to that moment, and that's sort of what we tried to do to build up to that. And I guess the theme for me, we were using a quote that I had found that was used quite a lot in mainland China. It was something that was printed on shipments of PPE and just sort of like volunteers shipping things to Wuhan. And it was a quote from a 7th century Japanese official writing to a Chinese official back in the day. And it was something like, we share we may live in different landscapes, but we share the same sky, we live under the same sky, essentially. And that to me was sort of the theme of the movie. And we use that as our guiding kind of path when structuring it. Sort of
a beautiful sentiment to sort of have kind of come to you to be like, yep, this is very sort of in line with your goals, but also sort of, just like a refreshing and sort of a clarion message.
True. Yeah. We didn't, and then I think that speaks to why this particular film, it's not I didn't want to politicize the virus, and I wanted this film to live as the version of the pandemic, part of the pandemic canon that is emerging now, that kind of fits in that humanist story that looks at what people were feeling and what they were going through, and every film, I think, um, the ones that I've seen are the ones that are investigative, whatever they may be. I think they all have a place right now, and I think what's important out of this experience is that even though it's currently ongoing, what we have is a sort of a record of the event and of the history of this. I think we will emerge from this maybe with I mean, I don't know how soon is too soon, and maybe some of you in the audience are feeling, well, maybe initially a little wary, but now maybe a little more. Perhaps, hopefully, there is a kind of a cathartic process in watching this film, something where you had time to reflect and think about your own situations.
Yeah. And I mean, yes, as you mentioned, there's sort of the pandemic canon. I like that term, but like, there are other films that sort of tread similar ground. And
Sure.
Normally that's like a thing filmmakers freak out a little bit about. But I love how you framed it as like, well, there's sort of different articulations or ways into maybe this kind of, the significant global event that cannot maybe be captured in a single document in any like real way, and sort of thinking about history as needing to have kind of lots of different chapters that kind of add up to this like archival various representation. That's right, a
document.
It makes me feel better about, like, because as a programmer, I was like, okay, well, we don't want it to feel too on the nose, but it's very important zeitgeist wise to be like offering opportunities for that reflection. So there's no definitive film. You sort of have to sort of work your way through and come to a larger, greater understanding through all of it. So
yeah, I agree. And I think that the cinematic documentary can do that. Like I think there's certainly a subjectivity to it. Obviously, every film has a subjective point of view, but I'm hoping that it is this film is that one that it works on emotionality and character study as a fiction film would do, as a narrative film would do, and not impose too many right or wrongs, morality into the story. Just sort of let you witness it, and I like those kind of films.
Yeah. And people pick probably their favorite character, much like you do in fiction. Like, here's who I identify with, and so here's who I'm writing along with a little bit. You talked a little about sort of like wanting to be sort of distanced from the cinematographers, the original sort of footage capturers, who certainly made choices, right? They pointed their cameras at these 9. But can you talk a little about the kind of editing process? You mentioned that your editors are in LA, you're in Toronto, and sort of like, what did assembling that team and working, kind of what was that process like? Particularly, it sounds, is clearly very different, not only because there was a pandemic happening, but also because of the kind of film that that you were able to be making. So like, the joys, challenges in that kind of process?
So many. We had to kind of figure out a process because this was a remotely edited film. And so if we want to go a little granular, I can take that apart a little more. I think early in the day, in order for me to see that we could actually get to the end of it, I requested that we have a huge editing team. And I'm so lucky that Starlight Media, the company behind the film, was able to see that through. I initially was joking around, but I wasn't really, and I was asking for 8 editors. I was thinking like, this is gonna be like Woodstock kind of, like we need to, and we also had this specific deadline. There was a sense of the race to get a film done, but I'm grateful that my team of producers and and even our sales agents, they were sort of like, take your time, don't rush, the film will emerge and it'll find its place. And that was great reassurance. But at that time in the summer in the spring of 2020, it was putting together teams. So in the end, I got 2 lead editors, both based in Los Angeles, of Chinese descent, Avita Zhou and Zimo, and each of them brought to the process a very refined ability to carve character
Yeah.
out of footage. I mean, you're literally carving footage to get
Yeah.
the so-called performance out of the
Mhm.
characters, and they did this wonderful tag teaming process. I had another two associate editors, and their job was to kind of whittle down all the 300 hours of footage to the essential scenes. So
Mhm.
we grouped everything by characters, and we used something that Diane Kwan, my producer, introduced to me through Bing Liu, who made Minding the Gap. And when he was cutting his film, he used this online whiteboard called Miro. And I'd never heard of it. And it's this infinity whiteboard where you can, like, you know, you can share it and work live on it. And you can make cue cards. And for me, I think for a lot of filmmakers, that's an essential process, you know, just creating the cue card storyboard. And that's what we were doing remotely, moving and shuffling around the cue cards together at the same time online, and then working on the edit. And then I would receive the cut. We weren't working in a live editing situation, so it was always sending me something to look at. Then I would feedback, would use Zoom, and we sort of picked our way through the movie that way. And it was a process. It was a journey, like all editing processes are, where you kind of start somewhere, you land on something you think is right, and then you get the feedback. It's from when we screened it, it wasn't quite there. There's confusion, and then so you go back and then you change it dramatically, and then you show that again is really not working, and it comes full circle, and you come back to that original idea, and then work from that again. And I found that to be the experience for almost all my movies, and this one especially also. And then post-production happened in Toronto, so I was able to go into studio to finish the film. But I found the process to be, like, it was the team was amazing. There was so much positivity and real drive to get it done. I loved everyone who worked on this film, and I never met anyone in person. I still to this day have not met Diane Kwan, the producer, in person.
I've met Diane in person.
I know, right? So it's crazy to me. It's crazy to me. But
have a reunion.
But we made it work. Yeah, we made it work. And you know, technology served us well in this regard.
Yeah,
it's not perfect. I do think things are a little longer, and it's a little can be frustrating to communicate when you want to pinpoint an edit and you can't do it live. I mean, that's always a problem. But it worked.
Yeah, we've learned lots of ways to kind of approximate things that we just took for granted, like putting something on a wall in a room that you're all in versus having a virtual version, or having a virtual film festival and having Q&As like this. But they approximate. I
like to think documentary filmmakers we're kind of like the cockroaches in the pecking order of the creative filmmaking. Like we'll find ways to make things work no matter what. I'm sure we could have figured out a way to do this if we didn't even have the internet. and you know, somehow we would have done this. So I love that the resilience of these documentary filmmakers I was working with.
Oh yeah. And I mean, early on I was like, oh well, documentary will figure it out.
They'll be the first ones.
Because there's always some weird context or weird constraint that you have to work around.
True.
In any documentary that's like, all right, well, how do we approximate this?
That is true. Yeah.
And you've been screening the film virtually. Well, have you been? How has that been? How is your kind of audience response? Have you been?
I'm so. Oh yeah, I mean, I'm living in a bit of a virtual silo here, so I'm literally constantly in this office of mine in my home, and so that is. It's not the same, as it would be, if I could be there with you right now in the audience. There's the thing about it that has been a little bit intangible is the audience reaction. But I think generally I've been getting feedback from people, and it's all been really great. I was worried that people would think this film is a little maybe too positive or like, kind of too much on that side of things, the humanist side of things. But I feel like we're filling a void where already people come in with the knowledge and context of the pandemic, the lived experience, the shared lived experience, the idea of Wuhan. And I do like that maybe we can strengthen and build the and maybe do away with some of the stigmas around the Wuhan, epicenter, and show it for what it is. But so I think I have an ear to the reviews and things, and they've been all really great, which is so welcoming right now.
Right. Normally it's don't read the comments, and now it's like, well, you have to read the comments because
nothing else.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, no, I mean, I'm very pleased that we're able to show the film, sort of add another layer, another kind of sort of dimension of humanity and complexity, and sort of keep this ongoing unfolding of how we as a global community kind of make our way toward the future.
And that's the thing, is like this circumstance we're in this situation, this unprecedented situation, as everyone is calling it, which it is. But the thing about it is that we are living and responding to it on an everyday in an everyday way, and our reactions turn with every turn of this virus. So, I mean, I remember back a few months ago when I was looking at the movie, this film, and my reaction to it was a lot different. I mean, I read it even more hopefully, with a lot more hope, and I had this feeling of this sort of cathartic feeling of watching the film. And now, because I'm in Toronto, where we're in a third wave that is worse than the first wave, and obviously the failure of certain when politics,
I've learned a lot about the vaccine distribution. I'm sorry that we are easily shipping it across the northern border.
We'll take whatever you don't want.
Yeah, apparently making some moves, but I was shocked to discover that Canada can only get their vaccines from Europe, and I was like, what is happening? But we'll try to push them. We'll push them north from Wisconsin. We'll just
please do.
We'll put them in the lake and just.
That's it. We need it here, and there's just a lot going on here that I think has been that has dampened anyone's optimism. But I hope that we can look at this film like Wuhan Wuhan and kind of glean something out of it that and maybe learn from it too. I mean. Chinese government obviously has their problems, but also as a government that's in a position where they can just set the tone for how people should, follow through with taking care of everyone else. Right. A country like that can do that, and people just followed in step. There was a little pushback, of course, as always there is, but I think it worked, and they're out of it as of April 2020. They've not been in it, and I have family in China, and a brother lives in Beijing, and he's on a vacation right now in southern China with his family, and everything is good as good.
Yeah. Well, are you working on anything next, new things that we can keep an eye out for?
I have a fiction film that I developed at the Sundance Labs in 2015 that I'm happy to say it's sort of seeing the light of day soon. So I'm going to hopefully travel permitting, hopefully make the film in mainland China and then get it out there soon. I've got other projects coming out down the pipeline, so hopefully I'll be able to bring something back to Milwaukee.
Yeah, and then you can come to Milwaukee.
Oh, that'd be great. I would love that.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your film,
thank you,
for your
Cara.
time, and we'll keep our eyes open for the next thing. Thank you.
And thank you to your film festival. Thank you to Milwaukee Film Festival for programming the movie and for sharing it with your audiences. And I'd like to thank the audiences as well for watching. Appreciate it.
Anytime.